Hello and welcome back to Nolan Financial Radio. My name is Tara Nolan from Nolan Financial. If you're new to the show, welcome. This is a show that's all about teaching you how to ask good questions. There is a lot of information out there, and that's not the problem. The problem is figuring out what is right for you in your life today with your family and your situation. So, if you're new, I would invite you to visit my website at www.nolanfinancialpartners.com. While you're there, check out the radio page because we record these shows and we have topics from Medicare, market volatility, IRAs, 401ks. If there's something about money, we've talked about it. And the goal is, you can search through and figure out something that's relevant for you and something you're trying to deal with today. While you're at the website, you click on the radio page and you can also subscribe to the program on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. So please don't hesitate to reach out to Chris and I with questions or to set up a meeting at 719-210-4242. That's 719-210-4242. So today we're going to talk about market volatility because I think it's really relevant with what's going on in the world today. That almost seems like there's always something going on in the world, but we're going to do some good conversation about that. But before we jump into our market volatility discussion, I wanted to see how my amazing co-host Tony Shore is doing. Tony, how are you today?
I'm trying to get situated here, get my camera centered. I've never been able to properly explain myself in this medium, the visual medium. I'm a radio guy, 35 years in radio, and now you've got me doing videos. So my apologies to the viewers is what I'm saying for those watching on YouTube. No, I'm doing great. My son is now married, and so that was a big event in the Shore lives, and my daughter is at college. My youngest is looking at colleges. So my pocketbook is screaming, but the rest of me is very excited, proud, and happy for all three of my children. So,
well, and make sure you tell him congratulations. That's awesome.
I will. Thanks, Tara. How about you and Chris? Now, you and Chris, not only is he your husband, your partners in the business and Nolan Financial, and I know Chris has been holding down the fort while you do world travels, work with your horses, write books. I mean, you've been busy.
We have been busy and it's really exciting. So the book is now out and available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It did really well on the launch, which was, it's kind of exciting because you put, a couple of years of blood, sweat, and tears into that. And it's kind of nice to go, hey,
yeah,
a little good news at the end. So,
yeah, that's nice.
We had a request I hadn't considered. So I've had several people say, well, how do I get a signed copy? And I'm going to add that as an option on the website because I'm like, yeah, because I always like to have a signed copy of people's books.
Sure.
So I think we're going to
my signed copy, I assume that's in the mail, Tara.
It is, Tony.
I can't wait. Thanks. The book, it's exciting. I just, Money Moves, the cover, from the cover to the stories you tell inside. Love it. I encourage our listeners to head to Amazon, check it out, right? Money Moves. And they just type in Money Moves, Tara Nolan. It'll pop right up. They even have the look inside thing where you can see the first few pages and read a little bit.
Well, and for the listeners that they don't know, Tony, is you were one of my advanced readers. So you about a year ago, you read the very rough first draft and it didn't have the figures. And I had to tell you, ignore all the grammar, just look for the ideas. And so sure. I really appreciate having you help develop this book because, you've been doing this, like you said, for 35 years. So you probably know or have heard a story about everything to do with money at this point.
Yes. Now I haven't been doing financial radio for 35 years, but I've been doing financial radio shows, and on this end of it for probably going on 10 years now.
Right.
So yeah, I've learned a lot. I've heard it all. So, but your show is unique in that, the stories you tell and the angle you take, it's not cookie cutter like a lot of so-called financial professionals out there. And I think that's key. So what are we going to talk about today on the show, Tara?
Well, I just want to get into talking about market volatility because it causes a lot of angst because when the market is doing well, it's fun. You pull out your statements and you're like, I made more money again. And that's awesome. But with the most recently the pandemic, and now we have our situation in Ukraine, and we're putting the economic sanctions on Russia, but we're all in the same world, so it's ultimately going to have an impact on us as well.
Mhm.
And so it's a lot of uncertainty, and especially when people are getting close to retirement or they're in retirement, uncertainty doesn't feel very good because you don't have that extra income coming in from where you were working. And
That's
s-
true.
so I really think we should, it's a topic worth discussing today to go. I mean, we've known always, I think we talk about it. We always know the one thing we can guarantee is the market's going to go up and the market's going to go down.
That's a guarantee. It
I
goes up
guarantee
and
that.
down.
And the challenge is always, well, when does it go up and down? And
Yeah, well, this year it's went up and down a lot, even more than recent past. I'll tell you that it's this year's been a bumpy ride in the market so far.
it's been a really bumpy ride. And when you have uncertainty like this, it's hard because, there are the companies and the stocks that do well, and then there's the ones that don't. And if you had a crystal ball, you could do very well.
Yeah, well, that's
And
true. That's true, and you need to. I think this is a good topic because obviously, you don't want to let emotions carry you away. I mean, my motto has always been never get too high, never get too low, and work with a financial services professional. That's my motto, and I think this is a good topic, and the timing obviously is important because it was just beginning to feel like we're coming out of the COVID nonsense and just that economic crash from that. And then once and for all, we're done with it. But then we find ourselves in the middle of a crisis with the Ukraine, and inflation starts creeping in. And the implications of all that has a real consequence for economies around the world and our economy. And it's obviously affected our markets this year. We can see that.
and it's just kind of, history repeating itself. I was talking with some people the other day about, back in the 80s, CDs would pay, sometimes almost like 8%. Sometimes someone said they could remember their grandfather earning a 12% CD.
Yep,
And
I remember 12% CDs actually.
and that's back when we had inflation.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting when you remember back. It's like, well, the good old days. Well, 12% today would be amazing because we haven't had our
It would
inflation
be
truly kick
amazing.
in. But things kind of rise up together and then they kind of fall down together. So it's just, life is going to continue to happen. And what
Yeah.
I would like the listeners to know is let's just get a little educated and let's not be afraid. And let's just go, okay, got it. This is happening. What do I do?
Yeah.
Because
And that's the question. And that's the thing. And I know this is something you and Chris work hard to prepare your clients for things like market volatility. And there are things you can, number one, have a plan that takes into account things like inflation and market volatility, right?
definitely. And so the first visual I would like everybody that's listening, and if you get my book, I actually have this figure in the book, but just think of a graph with, the bell curve, the one that goes up and then it comes back down. And then you
Hmm.
divide it into three sections. And so I call that first phase, that's your get it phase. This is when you're working, you're running your businesses, you're getting your promotions, you're doing all that good stuff. This is the phase where you have a lot of control and you're investing in the market. You probably got a 401k or maybe you have a SEP, something that you're doing. And the market, you see it going up and down, but it doesn't hit you the same because you're working. And so that's
Right.
your future money and you're not so worried about it. And so, that's what's going on in that phase. The second phase, I call it your got it phase. And then this is where you're should be enjoying retirement. This is
Right.
that place where, you've worked hard. Hopefully the kids are, married. Congratulations, Tony, again. And
Yep.
and off to college. And it's kind of like your second childhood because you're getting to do those things. But the difference here is now that great big, you've seen it in those financial magazines, the golden egg. You've created this egg and now you're starting to crack that egg. And that's a little
Right.
terrifying because
It
it's
is.
you see the big number just getting smaller. And it's hard to remember, like, this is what you spent all those years working to build it. So it's like this mental flip that you have to go where putting money in and now you go, okay, I worked hard. Now I get to pull that money out. But then that's where you got
Right.
to go, well, how am I going to spend it so I don't run out?
Mm.
because again, no one has that crystal ball to know, is it going to be 75 or 95? Or, and your grandfather, how old is he again, Tony?
He is 101 years old, Sarah.
Okay, so like he's already like off of the insurance tables.
Yes,
Like
and he's still going. He just bought a new camper. I kid you not, a pull behind camper. Now he's since he had a stroke last year. Up until that point, 100%. His memory is still sharp. He doesn't get around quite as well as he used to. He uses a walker and a wheelchair, but he's still going. And up until he had that stroke, he still drove everywhere himself and worked on the farm. And he's
that's
101. So he is unique, though. I mean, this is he's something special, and he still does woodworking and things like that. But he's just now starting to slow down at 101. But can you imagine? I mean, he's been taking RMDs for 30 years. So
yeah, he's the guy that the insurance companies are losing money on.
yes, he's the guy we can point to and smile.
He's won that deal.
Yeah,
So,
he has. They
but I
lost money
mean,
on him.
but that's really though. I mean, everybody is living longer now because the good or bad, the healthcare is better. We're having better diets. We're doing things. People are exercising. So, I mean, that's kind of the reality is we're living longer. And then in that bell curve, Tony, the third phase is the give it phase. And it's always interesting because every time I sit down with people for the first time, especially when they're just getting into retirement, they're like, okay, here's the deal. My family is going to get what's left over, but we're going to have some fun
Right.
and we're spending our money. And I'm like, I'm all behind that. And that's when I like to show the planning and go, well, guess what? It doesn't have to be an either or situation. And
Mm,
that's where planning gets fun is to say, of course you have worked hard. You deserve to enjoy it and have a good time. And it doesn't have to be, well, you're either going to live like a pauper so that you can leave your family something. You can live well and then if you plan right, still be able to have a legacy.
yeah,
And
that's true.
that's way better. I like to find those win-win situations.
Yeah. Well, exactly, and you think, well, if there's market volatility, how can we win? But it depends on your time horizon, right? For those who have a long time yet, like you said, on your bell curve of people in those different stages, if you've got more time, market volatility is no problem.
Right.
And as you get closer, then you change. The plan changes along the way, and the planning accounts for that change, and that will help deal with market volatility because you balance things out with more safety, things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we'll get into that. But, Tony, it's probably a good time just to remind everybody that if you are really interested in looking at where you are in your financial life cycle and see if you've got the right planning in play, give Chris and I a call at 719-210-4242. And I wanted to remind Tony, everybody who's bought a book, if you go to my website, www.nolanfinancialpartners.com, you can sign up. I've got three free bonuses for people who have bought the book. Because my goal with this book, Tony, is for people to dig deep and really use the book as, an education, but really go, how does this apply to me? And I really want everybody to walk away from reading this book being able to ask good questions so they can sit down with their financial services professional or really do good interviews and find somebody that's really going to be able to help them.
Yeah. So just go to nolanfinancialpartners.com/money-moves, and it's right there. Or you can just go to nolanfinancialpartners.com and click on the book link, and that'll take you to that page. And you scroll down, there's a place a link to order it. But if you scroll down, there's the different options. If you order 2 or 3 copies, you get all this bonus stuff. It's amazing. I really think you did a great job with this. And I encourage our listeners to visit the site. It's really cool.
It's been amazing, Tony. I've had a great team of people to work with. And, that's one of the concepts from the book is I think you do better with a team than trying to do things by yourself.
Sure. Well,
And
always, always. So now, Tara, for people who obviously the time horizons, jumping back into the market volatility conversation, um, you talked a little bit about people who are in their planning phase. They're putting a lot into the market with their 401ks and IRAs and investing heavily, and risk is okay to some extent there. but as you go along, things need to change because of market volatility, right?
Well, I do reading. I'm sure everybody does, and the S&P fell by more than 5% in January this year.
Yeah,
And it's probably the worst performance that we've had since like the earliest days of the pandemic. So we just need to have a plan for how we're going to deal with that because volatility
sure.
needs to be part of your plan because there's things going on right now. But I look back over the history, Tony, and there's always been something going on. I mean, when I
Yeah,
graduated from the Air Force Academy, I've spent a good portion of my adult life back and forth to the desert in the Middle East fighting for oil. and
right.
and then so that was going on. We had not Desert Storm 1 and we had Desert Storm 2. Now we have Syria. I mean, there's kind of always something going on. And so where you are in your life, it may not be impacting you directly, but these things are always going on and these things affect the market. So we just really have to talk about how that's going to work. So here's the good news. So that first thing is if you're in that get it phase where you're working and earning, this is where that dollar cost averaging model is really works. And if you're not familiar with dollar cost averaging, the idea, and this is usually during your working years, like where you have your 401k, is you just put in a standard amount, $500 a month or whatever it is. And the idea is when the market's down, that's good news because then you get to buy more shares. And then when the market goes up, the value of your account grows. And so that's kind of a nice place. So then you really, it's almost like a fire and forget. You just have that good habit pattern, you just put that money in there and it just keeps working for you. And we like that idea, right, Tony? We talk about that when your money's working for you.
Yes. Yeah. Make your money move for you, right? Money
Exactly.
moves. Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's really the good time. And what I want everyone to key in on is think about that financial life cycle model and where you are. So if you're in that working phase, the key here is really to be taking action. So you
Yeah.
don't need to be worrying about the market because the market's going to do what the market's going to do. Just
Right.
keep putting your money there so that your money's working for you and you're in that get it phase, so it's good.
Yeah.
And then this is when we start to get into the planning discussions, is when you start
Sure.
to get into that got it phase. And this is where it's common, you always want, 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in an emergency fund that's easy to get to.
So that's money that you don't want in the market, right?
Well, right, because you want your safe money, your food, clothing, and shelter money, I like to call it, just to be there. So you don't wanna say, "Okay, it's gonna be up and then it's gonna be down." You just wanna know if I need $10,000 this month, I've got it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't wanna go, "Oh, the market dropped a little bit and I only have 6," you know?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
your food, clothing, and shelter, you kinda need to eat every day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't work like, "Hey, kids, the market's down, we'll eat next month." So
That's not good.
so you wanna make sure that you know that you have your short-term money, and so that's a first planning question. I sit down with people and say, "What is your planning number?" And not everybody really knows about that or has thought about it, especially when they've been working and they're just new in retirement,
Mhm.
because when you're working, it's not as big of a deal because you have a paycheck coming every month. And so it's when you start to live off of that nest egg that you wanna start thinking about, "Okay, what is that short-term requirement that I'm gonna have?" And it could be things like you've just experienced, Tony. I don't know how much time you had to plan for your son's wedding, but that's kind of a thing you wanna go, "Hey, this is gonna cost me about this much, so let's just have that money kinda set aside." So
Yeah.
that because if you don't, then what ends up happening is then you start going to the credit card, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't wanna pull money out of retirement accounts or use credit cards for things like that, and weddings happen, cars happen. You need a vehicle, you need your kids, you're gonna have to help fund that wedding, believe me, I know, or college expenses, so, yeah, you really these are the type of events that you wanna have as part of your financial plan, trust me.
Well, and this was a story I didn't even know. So when we did my book launch party, my mom was one of my guests because she was one of my advanced readers. And
That's
Tony,
awesome.
she shared the story I didn't even know is when I got married, the way she paid for that was she cashed out her 401k.
Oh, no.
And I knew, like, because obviously I do her retirement planning because that protects me.
Right.
And and I was like, what did you do with your money?" And I didn't realize because she didn't have a 401k from her early years because she was a nurse before she was a doctor.
Sure.
And she's like, "Well, you were getting married, you were my oldest daughter." And I said, "Well, I have money right here." And she's like, "I didn't know the difference." She didn't understand that she paid penalties and did all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
And
no.
and so she cashed it out, and, here we are, but that's the kind of thing people do because they don't understand all
It
the
is.
ramifications.
Yeah, and there are. Boy, those 401ks and IRAs, those retirement accounts, 403bs, what have you, those are for retirement. There's a reason why they don't want you taking them out when you're younger, and there's a reason you shouldn't touch them. But yet, you do have to have some money in a situation where you can access it, and it can be used for things like that. So, and I know that's part of the planning that you and Chris do for your clients, right?
We do, and we encourage our clients to just call us. Like, if you've got something going on, you're going to make the decision you need to make, but give us a call because we can probably help you go, okay, got it. You have to have this money. So let's look at where we can pull it from or what strategy can we borrow it from somewhere. We help our clients all the time figure that out because life happens, especially when you
Right.
have kids.
Yeah.
And you're going to take care of your kids. It's just going to happen.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
so
Well, let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you, Tara, before we go on.
Sure. The number is 719-210-4242. That's 719-210-4242. And you can also connect with us for a discovery call right through the website, www.nolanfinancialpartners.com. If you're getting excited, I get excited about the plan and looking at where you are and how do we help make life better for you? Because
Yeah.
we don't change anything that's working, but I like to identify those gaps and holes and get those things fixed.
Well, for sure. And that's what this is all about. So, obviously, there are things people can do to hedge against market volatility and to make sure. I know balance is a word that's used a lot when it comes to market volatility. And we're talking a little bit about that, right? Money that you have at risk in the market or that is part of your retirement accounts, like a 401k, that's usually tied to the market. And so there's some risk involved. But then you also have to have that emergency fund, and you also have to have some money in safety or money where the principal's protected, right?
You have to have all those things. So we kind of touch base about your short-term money so that you have your emergency money. And then the thing is this is where we get into the emotional part. I talk about this in the book is money is way more emotion than math. And you want to have a plan
Mm.
to stick to your long-term investments. And so here's the
Yeah.
thing I like to show people is, in the Great Depression, how long do you think that the market was down for? The Great Depression went on for years, but how long was the market actually down?
Yeah, I don't know that answer to
It
that
was it
question.
was only down about 4 years,
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
the thing is the year that it recovered, Tony, 66%. So,
Wow.
but here's what happens, and this happens, and you can see it in 2001 and you see it in 2008, is the market's
Everybody had
dropping,
pulled their money out.
and people just say you reach the point where your gut cannot take it anymore, and you're like, "Okay, I'm pulling the money out. Whatever I have, I'm gonna take it out." And then they miss the recovery.
They
So
miss
it's
all
like
the upside.
they lose twice. So
Yeah.
if you're gonna be in the market, you really just need to understand that for your long-term investments, you need a strategy and you need to understand because we all know that you buy low and you sell high, but that's
Right.
not how it works emotionally.
Yeah.
Because when the money because it works when you're just trying to buy, but when you've been high and then you're going low, that is an emotional roller coaster and very few people can take it.
Yeah.
And
I
and
forget the stat. I read a stat once, Tara, and it was in a reliable source. I think it was either Kiplinger's or Forbes, where they did a survey and they looked at at investments, and the majority of people end up selling low and buying high in the
yeah,
market. The
because
majority of investors.
it's that emotional roller coaster. I did a podcast interview with one of my friends who's Canadian and he actually lives in Taiwan now. He's a software
Oh,
engineer.
wow.
So
Wow.
all of his buddies are doing crypto and Bitcoin and he said, I'm really interested in starting to look at real estate because you can't watch the market crashing and at 10 o'clock at night do a knee-jerk reaction and pull your money out. He's and lose everything. He said, if
Yeah.
at least if you have real estate is going to be a little slower. And he said, thank goodness I have a broker so that when I'm getting scared and I want to pull my money out of the market, my broker, it talks me off the ledge and says, okay, are you sure you want to do that?
Yeah.
And because it's just we're all people, right? And
Yeah.
we're all good with making money, and that's when we talk about risk. As I always
Yeah.
ask, how much money are you willing or able to lose?
Yeah.
And that's the real question, because
It
the
is.
money that in the market is your long-term investment, and you're okay as long as you have that long-term strategy and you've thought about it before the market drops. You can't It's really hard to deal with it when then you're in the middle of the crisis. You need to have a
It
plan
is.
ahead of time. And the key is also having that balance so you can watch the market go, because you've planned and you have your safe money. So you're still
Yeah.
going to be okay. You're still going to be able to live. And you can watch the market and go, yeah, this isn't fun, but it'll come back up
Yeah.
and I'll be okay until that happens.
Right.
And so then the next thing, Tony, is really understanding realistic expectations. And, part of that is, with my people, when I'm sitting down, we usually always have some kind of a balance between red money or money that's in the market, and then green money, money that's guaranteed either in insurance or annuities or something. And asking about the market, people just have no idea. And I had a couple sit down and I said, okay, because I use models and say, what do you think is a reasonable amount to earn in the market? And they're like, well, I guess 25, maybe 20%. And and I'm like, "Tell me where you invest your money, because I would like to know about this magical land."
Yes. Yeah. Boy, if you're making 20% in the market or more,
Well, and we all have, right? If you've been in the market, there's always that quarter where you get your statement,
yeah.
you've earned
Oh,
20
sure.
or
Yep.
sometimes 40%, but that's
Yeah.
not that's not
We've
over
all
20
had those
years.
quarters. Yeah. We've all had those quarters. But,
It
and I mean, if you look at the market over the last 10 years, I mean, or even, 5 years, I mean, maybe five, some people might be as fortunate as 10. It varies, but yeah, 25%. That's people don't understand what's happening, do they?
Yeah, no, but because no one ever talks about the down years. So even with people at work and people
Right.
chatting you up, that's all they talk about. So,
I
you
made
look
this
on
much in the
Facebook,
market.
people
Yeah.
only share the good news. They don't talk about
Yeah.
the down years. So it's really getting a little bit of education about what's realistic. And I talk about this in the book, but you go historically, the market generates a return of about 10%.
Yeah.
And you're going to have, years that it's amazing, and you're going to have years when it's down. But average is about 20%, or sorry,
10.
10%.
10. Yeah.
And
We wish the average was 20.
here's what you really have to understand about being realistic is in your financial life cycle model. I'm looking at the beginning of the curve when it's going up and your get it phase. You don't really care,
Right.
because you're in there for the long haul.
Yep.
Where it starts to matter is when you're in that got it phase of, if you have like a 2000 or 2008 where some people lost 40% of their money. That's not so good when you're in retirement,
No.
because you don't
No.
have time to recover. And
Right.
so that's where you really have to do that planning, and because every person's different, every person's food, clothing, and shelter money is going to be different.
Yep.
So this is where you really have to go, okay, how much do I need to be safe? And then how much do I can be exposed to risk? Because
Yeah.
you don't want to have that situation, Tony, where the market has dropped and then you still got to live. So you're going to pull money out of your account while it's down. That's
Yeah.
just
That
you're taking
that
a
does
hit twice.
that doesn't work. Well, we're out of time, Tara. It just flew by. Let our listeners know one more time before we go how they can get a hold of you.
Sure, Tony. Wow, that's really gone quick. I have more to tell you. But so the number is 719-210-4242. Tony, it's 719-210-4242. And definitely visit the website, www.nolanfinancialpartners.com. Make sure you sign up for those free bonuses if you've bought the book Money Moves on Amazon or anywhere else. And wow, this is really a lot of good stuff happening, Tony.
All right. Thanks, Tara. That does it for today's episode of Nolan Financial Radio with our host, Tara Nolan.
Join us soon for another episode of Nolan Financial Radio, and we'll talk with you next time.